All right, so suppose everyone's ready. We're going to start today's class. All right, so today we're going to focus on homework 2 and talking about some of the answers. But once again, there's no correct or wrong answer. It's just simply a share of thoughts among all of us. But before that, let's do a small recap about last week's homework discussion, right? We talked about a lot of models, and then we always go from the simple one to medium complicated, and then to the more complex one. And you see a very similar trend also for today's homework discussion. And why we're doing that? So one of the purposes to do this is we want to select the appropriate model. That is not too simple to describe this complicated world, but it's not too complex to give us problems that we cannot focus on what we're trying to identify. So we have a term. We say that we are choosing the models based on the Goldilocks principle. Anyone knows about Goldilocks? I think you must know about this in Chinese. So let me try to bring your memories back.
Goldilocks and the Three Fairies. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Goldilocks. She went for a walk in the forest.
All right, so everybody knows about Goldilocks, right? So why are we calling this a Goldilocks principle when we're choosing the models? Because we're choosing between the simple one, the complex one in between. We're going to choose just the right one to describe our exposure and our outcome and their relationships. So a very quick review of last week's homework discussion. We focus on the exposure concentration, which has not yet entered the human body. And to describe, so we start from a single person or a single worker. For the distribution, we talked about how we can use mean or standard deviation or GM or geometric standard deviation to describe the distribution. The learning objectives for this week, I think it's very simple and actually easier than last time. First one, we try to understand the box model and box meaning for each organ or tissue. We view it as a box. We try to do the application to the real life epi study design, and I'll show you that. You'll also experience that in today's group discussion. So the roadmap for today, we're going to talk about homework 2. We're going to have a preview of homework 3 at the end. So it's going to help you with the homework 3. And there's also several announcements that I want to make sure that we are all aware of. Next week, we're going to have the review on homework 3. And the week after that, we're going to have our exam. And for the final week, we're going to do a group presentation based on one of the papers. So my plan is we're going to have 2 groups, and both of you are going to use the same critique paper and then to do a modification on the study design. So let's start for today's class officially. But before that, do you have a dream? This is my style again. Do you have a dream? Or do you have any dreams? I can still see a smile in your eye. So would you like to share, Jocelyn? Do you have any dream?
I don't want to work.
You don't want to work.
But have money.
And have money, that's great. And anything else? It's a good start.
I want to work for something that I enjoy.
You want to work for something that you enjoy. Okay, so that's career. And anything else? I'm just curious, anyone ever dream of owning your own house? No? Everyone just want to take over your parents' house? At least have some dream, right? Anyone ever thought about having your own house? Raise your hand. Okay, great. For the people who have dreamt about having your own house, what does your dream house look like? So this can be your kitchen in your dream house, right? It's very nice, and also these. So let's say we have 3 options here for the kitchen. Let's take votes. So this is option number 1, 2, and 3. And then these are like a stone countertop. Countertop meaning 厨房的台面. Okay, so countertop is this. So it's about this stone countertop. Do you know where it comes from? Probably never thought about it, right? It just, it might be the stone from the east part of Taiwan or imported from Italy. And then it comes to the manufacturer, and then it's going to be magically appear on my kitchen as my countertop. So in 2019, just in this past 3 years, US CDC, they announced a spotlight in their report. They discovered that there is an outbreak. Outbreak is the word that I used to describe this episode. There was an outbreak of silicosis in engineered stone fabrication workers. Basically, people who make our kitchen top, countertop. What they found is that these workers, while they're cutting those marble stones, they're exposed to high levels of silica dust. And then once they're inhaled into their lung, the disease is incurable. So basically, you cannot reverse the process. And then the severity is within 4 states. They found 18 cases, and 2 of them died. So what does that tell you? 2 people died because they were making this beautiful kitchen countertop in somebody else's dream homes. In Taiwan, what is our history? We share the fair history of silicosis compared to many other countries. So any locations you can think of where in Taiwan are especially linked to silicosis in the past? Like our grandparents' generation. Well, sorry, my grandparents' generation, your great-grandparents' generation. 九份. And then anywhere? That region? 九份. Hualien. Hualien is more recent. So we hold on to your thought. Have you ever been to Pingxi? What do you do in Pingxi? Sky Lantern. And what else do you do there? Do you know they have a mining museum in Pingxi?
In Shifen.
Yeah, I think so. So you go take the rail, and then you have this Sky Lantern, and on top of it, you write your dreams. I'm going to Johns Hopkins, and then now there you go to be.
No.
You didn't do that? Okay. We're going to start our group discussion very soon, but let me just go over some of the questions now. For the first question, the simple cumulative, we consider exposure to the silica dust. All right, and then by pressing F9, you can do the simulation. So let's say if we can change the GSD of exposure, then we can see a very different number of peaks. So the first question is, do you think the presence of peaks can affect the accumulation of damage? So let's now break into groups, and then for group discussion, let's do it one by one. So let's now talk about question number 1. How are you going to take turns and present the questions later? Paper, rock, scissors. Go ahead, please. You can choose to go first or later. Okay, so you start from question 1, question 2, question 3, 4, and 5. All right, so only for the first problem set, which is A1. All right. Okay, so I think both groups are ready. Would you like to share on the first one? The first one is, do you think the presence of peaks affect the accumulation of damage?
We say yes.
And the reason being?
We see the Excel sheet. If there's fewer peaks, then the accumulation of damage is lower. But when there's more peaks, that would be more exposure, and that's leading to more damage.
So we have GSD equals to 1.5. I also did a simulation for GSD equals to 3. By using GSD equals to 1.5, actually can't really see much of the peaks. So it's really hard to answer this question if you set the GSD equals to 1.5. But if you do it with GSD number equals to 3, we see there can be different number of peaks, just like what we did last time. But also some of the peaks seems to be quite crazy. right? Take this one, for example, if you have a crazy peak for exposure, then the damage will automatically elevate or go higher, and then it's going to contribute to the final cumulative damage.
We try to enter GSD equals to 1.5 and 3.
Yes.
And we found out both is equal to 2 when K damage equal to is 2.
I make two figures, and one is GSD equal to 1.2 because I think the GSD more close to the one, the distribution will more normally.
Okay, excellent. So basically that's this figure, right? So let's move on to the model B. We understand the simple cumulative. Now we want to add one tissue compartment. So now we go back to the group discussion again, and then we can go through all these questions. But this time we're going to start from group B and then group A alternately.
Question was, what would happen to the time?
Please go ahead.
If you need to use the restroom, feel free to go. So here we're going to have a different discussion. Now, after understanding all these exercises, you are asked to help ILOSH, which is Ministry of Labor, to conduct a project assessing workers' exposure to silica dust. All right, and the risk of lung damage, because you just saw the US CDC report on the silicosis. And what you're going to do, you're going to find a collaborator first, right? You want to see where can we do the sampling.
食材薄板没有失败的情况下呢，它是一片可以切成变成2片，我们在资源上呢就可以节省50%。
Now we're going to have a population model, all right? And then we're assuming that the people's exposure is have an exposure of GM1 and GST equal to 2. And there are going to be 10 workers together. But among these workers, not all of them have the same damage constant. So we set the damage constant to be 20% of the mean. And supposedly, if silica exposure can cause lung damage, this risk should be the same among all these group of workers, assuming that this group of workers are similar enough and they're exposed to the similar exposure distribution. Lastly, I want to have some small reflection about this whole series of homework 2. I feel study itself is like a reversible proportional model. And why is that? You will keep studying, right? And then the knowledge is going to be stored somewhere in your head. But then you're also going to forget it, right? Forget about it, right? So the accumulation is kind of slow compared to your reading. And then once you stop studying, it's going to decay gradually. And then some of these things that is stored in your head, after you think about them, it becomes your actual knowledge. So there is a very long delay after you read, and then you can start really understand something and then try to store it. So I think learning is exactly the same process, probably due to the brain cells that we have. All right, so that's the homework set. And then we're running out of time, but let me just quickly guide you through. For your next homework set, I prepared a tutorial. So before you do your homework, just check on the tutorial. And what do I mean by that? This is already online, okay? And this will guide you through question by question how you can just follow the instruction and do homework 3. In homework 3, we're going to do discrete disease model simulation. And discrete disease meaning that you have the exposure, and then you have exposure threshold. Only the concentration that exceeds the threshold is going to give you a response. So based on this concept, we have a series of questions. This is probably this is going to be the easiest and the most straightforward homework. So you can try to do it early and then enjoy the discussion a bit more. I think every time we finish this class, we need to have a bowl of candies. So we can, okay, let me do that. Maybe candies or chocolate. Yeah. All right, thank you.